What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Monday, and it is Monday, May 22nd. We got a lot of stuff to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And quick little program note, this Wednesday, Ellen Brown, written a lot of good material on banking, will be our on-air guest for the third hour in the show. On Monday, June 5th, Gilad Otzman is going to be our guest, talking about his concert tours, his presentations on Israel and Palestine, so that'll be definitely worth looking forward to here. Now, as you know, Donald Trump is often about the globe in Air Force One, and he's just traveling all over and making all kinds of speeches, and basically setting his foreign policy in place. And one of the things he has done, he's confirmed that U.S. ties with Bahrain are not facing any tension over Bahrain's human rights records. And, of course, the reason for that is Bahrain is home to the U.S. Fifth Fleet, and nobody wants to mess with that. And you need to understand, from the point of view of the United States government, human rights are only important when it can be used to change a regime that the U.S. government feels needs changing. And Bahrain is all buddy-buddy with the U.S. government, so their human rights issues are simply not all that important. Looking at all of the comments that Trump is making, he is clearly putting the United States on the side of the Sunni Muslims in terms of their bitter sectarian war with the Shias. And that is, obviously going to curry a lot of favor with many of the Muslim rulers. And as a matter of fact, Trump and 55 Muslim-majority states just signed a pact pledging 34,000 troops to fight ISIS in Iraq and Syria. And if you think that's what they're really going to be fighting, I have some of Saddam's nuclear weapons to sell you on that one. So they're calling this thing the Riyadh Declaration, and it's a big deal about how we're all uniting to fight against ISIS and Al-Qaeda, except that we know that ISIS and Al-Qaeda are a put-up job. They're a faux enemy to justify the war. Oh, ISIS is there, we must invade. Oh, ISIS is over there, we must invade. And that's the real goal of the war on terror, to sell you intervention after intervention after intervention. Now, a lot of people are very, very concerned about this declaration. And we're seeing articles like over in Sputnik News, concerned about this so-called Arab NATO, which is going to be led by Saudi Arabia. And analysts are looking at it as seriously destabilizing the region and possibly being a precursor to a massive war. And it's looking more and more like the United States wants to use Saudi Arabia and the other Arab nations, the Muslim nations, to go after Iran. Because the U.S. government has not given up their dream, their goal, their desire to take Iran apart, impose private central banking on it, and make sure that Iran's oil is sold only for the U.S. dollar. Bring back the reign of the petrodollar here. Now, Trump is over in Israel saying everything that the Israeli government wants him to say. And still he's getting a rough reception. A lot of the ministers didn't want to meet with him. Netanyahu literally had to order people to show up. You will show up and respect this foreign head of state. But a lot of the people, the hardliners especially, don't think Trump is going to be as supportive of Israel as they feel he ought to be. Forgetting, of course, that Donald Trump is the president of the United States of America, and his top priority is supposed to be the United States of America, not Israel. And apparently, as part of the package of documents that preceded the arrival of Donald Trump, they had a map of Israel. And Israel's justice minister, Avilat Shaked, just went ballistic because the Trump map of Israel did not include the West Bank as Israeli territory. And, of course, the West Bank is not recognized as part of Israel internationally, but Israel says you will recognize it, and that will help us sell it to the rest of the world. So Trump can't win for losing. No matter what he does, he's still getting a rough time over there in Israel. Now, then, U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, who's also globetrotting right now, is calling on Iranian President Hassan Rouhani to end Iran's ballistic missile tests. And this is Washington, D.C.'s first reaction to Rouhani's re-election. Washington was hoping somebody else might get in, but we're seeing the same thing in Iran that we're seeing in North Korea. You are not allowed to have weapons to discourage invading and plundering. That's what we do, and you should just get used to it. So they're already out there saying Iran should stop their ballistic missile tests. And I don't think Iran is going to go for that, because Iran, just like North Korea, understands they are on the U.S. government's special high-interest targets list for eventual invasion and regime change. And they don't want that to happen, because they're seeing what has already happened in all the other countries that the United States has regime changed. And it's not good for those countries, it's not good for the people, very good for American corporations, but they really don't want to see that. And let's be honest, every nation has a right to defend their country from foreign invaders. And of course, every nation that's out there trying to build a defensive military is accused of being aggressive. Oh, they're being aggressive. Well, when was the last time Iran actually invaded another country in a war of conquest? It's been over 200 years. They want these weapons to keep other people from invading their country. And it's perfectly reasonable. Look at who has been doing all the invading, regime change, coup d'etats, drone strikes over the last 2 decades. And you will realize who is the real aggressor here. And it's not Iran, and it's not North Korea, and it's not Russia. It is the United States. We're going to do a quick shout-out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network, and we're going to take a phone call from Jim in Chicago. Jim, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
How you doing, Michael? A couple of things. What do you think about Donald Trump's idea of taking over $800 billion away from Medicaid and food stamps? And the other thing, his daughter, she's collected over $100 million from the Arab nations to protect women's rights. What are your comments about those two items?
Well, first of all, again, we have people who are seriously, because of decades of plunder and pillage of our pocketbooks, they're dependent on food stamps and Medicare. Claire and I see that, right in front of us here on the island of Oahu. I don't think it's a really good move, but I also understand the Washington, D.C. government is broke, and they're still trying to pour more and more money into the wars. And as we get further into this wartime economy, it's going to bring a lot of suffering to the American people, especially those who are most vulnerable and fragile. Now, as far as this fund for women's rights, it is a little bizarre, given that many of these nations pouring money into this fund have a very, very poor record for women's rights. But apparently this fund is going to be managed by the World Bank. It's not directly under the Trump's control. So at least on the face of it, it doesn't appear to be another Clinton Foundation type scam. But we cannot know. But it may be another form of pay for play. You will donate to our favorite charities, and they may even be legitimate charities, but it's still a form of arm-twisting people to hand over money in exchange for favorable treatment. And if that's really what's going on, it's another tremendous disappointment from Donald Trump.
I would highly agree with you. But, getting back to the cutting of Medicare and Medicaid and food stamps, when you start cutting people's programs like that, you're going to have rioting in the streets.
I'm seeing that already. I mean, and not just the liberal snowflakes who are out there still beating up people who say things they don't like. I keep hearing all this talk about the summer of rage that's coming, and I find this very, very alarming. But just going around talking to people, I see so many people who are really on the edge, and I'm feeling it too. Yeah, one spark. We don't know when it's going to happen. We could actually see an explosion of rioting in the streets of America, which I'm certainly against. I don't like to see people get hurt, and moreover, it would give Trump an excuse to declare a national emergency, and completely reshape the government into whatever his oligarchical backers want it to be.
Right. Okay, Michael, I'm going to let you go. Thank you very much for your time.
All right, thank you very much for the phone call. Now then, getting on back to Iran and this demand that they stop testing missiles with which they might defend their country against invasion someday. Over in Tehran, they're basically saying that all of this Iranophobia is really just a trick, a scam, to boost arms sales to Arab nations. And maybe, but I really do think that the United States is selling weapons to Saudi Arabia for an eventual war on Iran. Because remember, they did it before. The U.S. sold all kinds of weapons to Iraq to support Iraq's war against Iran. And I would like to see the government of Saudi Arabia take a look at that recent history and realize Iraq did not come out of that very well at all, despite all the weapons that were sent on in. And eventually, the existence of those weapons, provided by the United States of America, was cited as justification to go on in and invade Iraq and basically lynch the ruler there. And Saudi Arabia needs to realize there is absolutely no guarantee that they will not fall onto that special high-interest targets list somewhere down the road. And they do need to keep that in mind while they're doing their negotiations. Now then, interesting little development. This gets on back to Comey's claims that he had a memo saying that, well, Comey has been silent on this so far, but it was this New York Slime story saying that President Trump had suggested dropping the investigation against Michael Flynn, and Comey had written a memo of it. And then somebody called the New York Slimes and said, this is what's on the memo, and the New York Slimes ran with it. And it's already problematic because 2 months after this memo was supposedly written, Comey was testifying before the Congressional Committee and testified under oath he had not been put under any political pressure to alter or end an investigation. So either he was lying before the Congressional Committee or somebody's lying about that Comey memo. And again, under the law, Comey is obligated to immediately report such an attempted obstruction of justice to the Department of Justice at the time, not just wait 3 months and then come on out with it following his firing. So Comey's already in legal trouble if this in fact actually happened. And now there is doubt that it actually did happen, because apparently the New York Slimes has now pulled the story off their website about this Comey memo, when their journalist who wrote the story admitted he hasn't seen any memo. It was just described to him, and he ran with that. And the journalist was actually interviewed on MSNBC and admitted he'd never actually seen the memo. And so the New York Slimes pulled the article. It's more fake news, and we have seen so much of it. And by the way, circulation of false information to sabotage President Trump is actually a felony under Title 18, Section 1038. If the corporate media are putting out false stories to harm the presidency, the responsible party can go to jail. Of course, in our present circumstances, they're not going to be prosecuted. That's the way the system is running. But that's what's going on. Now, as far as the investigation into Michael Flynn, there does appear to be something going on there, because Michael Flynn has now pled the Fifth Amendment and refuses to comply with the subpoena to testify before the Congressional Committee. So it's starting to look like something is going on there. And apparently this Russian collusion, Russian influence investigation is now focusing on Jared Kushner as a person of interest. So Trump may not have known what was going on, but there may have been something going on, and they're making as big a deal out of it as they can. Meanwhile, a lot of people are asking, why wasn't Barack Obama impeached when he obstructed justice? And remember, Obama came out in a TV interview selling this idea that, yes, she was careless with classified information on her email server, but it did not rise to the level of criminal negligence. And, of course, Comey took his lead from that and said exactly the same thing. He went down the list of the Title 18 felony violations Hillary Clinton was found to be guilty of, and then let her skate saying she didn't mean to do wrong. Even though Title 18 does not require intent, it clearly says negligent exposure of classified documents is a violation. And then there was that Loretta Lynch, Bill Clinton meeting where all they talked about was their grandchildren. And that's why they kicked the entire crew and everybody else off that airplane, so they could talk in private about their grandchildren. All right, let's talk about Seth Rich. Things are heating up there, and word is that the inner circle of the DNC and Hillary Clinton are in a little bit of a panic, because over the weekend, Kim.com came on out and said he knows for a fact that Seth Rich was leaking the DNC emails to WikiLeaks because he, Kim.com, was part of the pipeline. So now we have an actual witness who's come forward and said, yes, this is what is going on because I helped to do it. And everybody is starting to get really upset because over and above the fact that Seth Rich's assassination was highly suspect, the official story made no sense. Over and above the fact that he was actually still alive when the police reached him. Over and above the fact that the attending physician said that his wounds were not fatal. They were actually rather minor. And then his very strange, bizarre death in the hospital. There's a lot of very weird stuff going on out there. And to nobody's surprise, the corporate media is now on the attack against anybody questioning the official story of how Seth Rich died. Just like 23 years ago, the corporate media was attacking anybody who questioned the official story of the death of White House Deputy Counsel Vincent Foster. Even the Young Turks are attacking Kim.com, which makes you wonder just who it is they're actually working for. And all Kim.com has said, yeah, it was going on. I was part of it. He's in a position to know. Now, Sean Hannity, to his credit, is on top of this story. And he is convinced that this was an assassination for political reason. And he says he's not backing off. They're going to have to fire him to basically get him to give up on this. And they might. A lot of firings going on in the corporate media right now of unreliable sources, or supporters rather. Even Newt Gingrich is calling for an investigation into the Seth Rich assassination and the leaking of the DNC files. And so the Washington Post is now on the attack after Newt Gingrich. It's amazing how fast they can turn on you when you are treading into the secrets, the big secrets here. And, of course, the corporate media has a reason for wanting this to stay silent. Not just the assassination. They bet their credibility on this story that the Russians had hacked the DNC servers, and that story is now completely discredited. It was a leak, not a hack. Even the company that the DNC relied on to say it was a Russian hacking job have backed off and said, no, we don't really know that. We can't know that. And the DNC has never allowed their servers to be given a forensic analysis by any qualified investigative agency, either official or private. It's just take our word for it. And that's a tall order. Now, as you know, Seth Rich's family are staunchly on board with the official story. They are represented and are spoken on behalf of by a known political crisis management public relations guy. And that's a giveaway there. More when we come on back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking about the assassination of Seth Rich. We're talking about all the evidence that's starting to surface that he was, in fact, the leaker from the DNC to WikiLeaks. And now we have Kim.com coming forward and saying that he was part of the pipeline that was bucket brigading this stuff over to WikiLeaks. Now, the family has towed the official line. We don't know why, but they're represented. They don't come out and make their own statements much. They did a little video the other day to basically wag their finger saying, don't you question the official story. And they're represented by a professional public relations crisis manager who does most of their speaking for them. But apparently not everybody in the Seth family, the Seth Rich family, is going along with the official story. And Jonathan Rich, who's Seth Rich's cousin, says that he doesn't believe the botched robbery story. And he went out on Twitter responding to Sean Hannity and saying that he never bought the robbery thing. And apparently the patriarch of the family, the father, literally ordered him to take the tweet down. So it's a little bit of coercive. Now, there's a new story that's come on out about this. As you know, the timeline is that Seth Rich had a few late drinks at a bar, and then he was walking home when he was jumped and beaten up and then shot twice. And according to the owner of the bar where Seth Rich was last seen, nobody has come in to the bar to question the employees or look at the surveillance tapes to see if somebody was following him. They're just not interested. We have our story. Don't bother us with facts. And, of course, the reason they're trying to preserve this whole Russia hacked the DNC is they're still trying to sell this idea that Donald Trump and Russia were in some kind of collusion and that this is why Donald Trump should be taken out of the White House, and in all fairness, it should be given back to Hillary Clinton. But you need to remember, John Podesta, who managed Hillary Clinton's campaign last year, received $35 million from Russia while he was advising Clinton and Obama. And apparently he's linked to this $35 million transaction between a Kremlin-funded company and a company he himself sat on the board of, and he did not list this on his financial disclosure reports. So a lot of people were doing business with Russia, but it's only a big deal if it can be used against Donald Trump. All right, we're going to go ahead and take a phone call from Glenn in Philadelphia. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. You know, I've been getting emails lately from muggers objecting to the fact that I carry concealed. And when I point out to them, yeah, but you guys are muggers. I mean, if I don't carry, you guys might mug me. And you have a history of mugging numerous people in recent years. They accuse me of being a provocateur. You know, that I'm a troublemaker who doesn't carry and conceal.
Yeah.
See, and that, of course, is an analogy designed to apply to the question of North Korean and Iranian missiles.
It's a good analogy, and you're absolutely right here. You've got the United States of America is invading country after country after country, and then acting like any countries that are trying to build up their defenses to forestall an eventual U.S. invasion, that somehow they are the bad guys.
Yeah. So I just you know, email the muggers back and tell them, you know, well, I understand your objection, but I'm sorry you haven't, you know, persuaded me, and I intend to continue carrying concealed.
Well, next the muggers are going to hit you with economic sanctions and say bad things about you in the corporate media.
Well, hopefully they don't seem to have any direct connections to my employers, and I've arranged to deal with banks other than the ones, you know, where they work. So I think maybe I'll be okay.
Well, I certainly hope so. Anyway, we're coming up on a commercial break here. Thank you very much for the phone call. And when we come on back from this next commercial break, we've got another caller waiting on the line. Then we're going to get on back to all of this political backstabbing that's going on in Washington, D.C., and the message it sends to the rest of the world. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and we're going to take a phone call from Nathan in Los Angeles. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mike. Huge fan of your show. Been listening to it for a long time. I wish I was a billionaire. I would put you on my payroll.
Well, thank you. That would certainly really help.
Yeah, no, I
I mean,
challenge anyone who's listening to your show.
Claire and I are so deep in debt, it would take the Keldish to find us.
Oh, my gosh. I challenge anyone who's listening to your show, please support Michael Rivero, Republic Broadcasting, because we really, really need you guys.
Thank you.
Just a quick thing, Mike. There's a gentleman who calls into your show pretty frequently. His name is Mo in Florida. And I want to know how to best get in contact with him because a little over a year ago, he mentioned something on your show. And I'm doing some sort of 9/11 research, and he mentioned something that I'm kind of researching at the moment, and I think he might have some information that would be of use to me.
Well,
what do you think is the best way to contact him?
Unfortunately, the RBN phone system does not trap and log phone numbers, and as a general rule, I tend to scrub the email for the safety and privacy of the people who write in. So I don't actually have contact information for him, but if you tell us what aspect of 9/11 you're working on, he may call into the show and share the information he has.
Sure. So it's in regards to a History Channel show called History's Business. He said he saw it about over a year ago. I've been working independently of architects and engineers of 9/11 Truth, trying to find the video, and I'm looking for anyone who had seen the episode. And during your show about over a year ago, he did mention seeing it. So I wanted to know maybe some details of the show that might help me to find it.
Okay, yeah, I remember when he called in about that, and I couldn't find it either, but we're living in an era where inconvenient videos are being scrubbed. I'm rather amazed that History Channel was able to actually put on this miniseries, if you will, about CIA drug running back in the 60s and 70s and 80s. I'm amazed they got that on the air.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it is amazing the little truth that sometimes comes out through the television set.
Of course, they may be getting ready to shift the blame onto somebody else and say, "Oh, it was a rogue. It was this. It was never official." And certainly, I don't think they're going to mention the Bushes and the Clintons.
Oh, certainly not. Actually, really quickly before I log off here and let you continue on, I was able to get a hold of the Annie Network's archives, and I got someone in the archive system to look for the episode for us, but apparently they scrubbed about 10 episodes that pertain to the year when that episode appeared in December of 2003, which is confirmation
Imagine my
there's something there.
Yes, imagine my shock. Well, maybe somebody has now, what was the show again, and what was the specific episode?
The episode appeared between December 2003 to March 2004, somewhere in between that time frame. It was a Sunday morning show that appeared on about 8 a.m. Right before another show called History Center. The show itself was called History's Business.
History's Business.
Featured Larry Silverstein.
And, okay, well, yeah, I could understand that. But you don't actually have a title of the episode, right?
No, but the show itself would feature hosts, managers of big business or CEOs of big business that.
But Silverstein hosted this episode.
He was on the episode, and he was questioned about Building 7, and he explicitly said it was brought down for safety reasons via controlled demolition. And the show has been scrubbed. I can only find another person who said they'd seen it, and Mo in Florida was another person that said he saw the episode.
All right, well, we'll put out the call to Rivero's Rangers to see if they can hunt down a surviving copy somewhere on the net. And I understand you also wanted to talk about Seth Rich real quick.
Yes, I just wanted to say, based on my communication with other people, a lot of people are not falling for the illusion anymore. They see right through the government illusion that Seth Rich was just a freak accident, and a lot of people are realizing that there was something very strange that took place. And I've referenced the Vince Foster case and the strange circumstances around that, and other people who've had something to share with the public. Mm-hmm.
Well, right now, the American people have awakened and realized that we live under a government that does lie to us, certainly about Saddam's nuclear weapons. That was a watershed moment. We're coming to realize we live under a government that doesn't play by its own rules. It's not in compliance with the Constitution or the Bill of Rights for the most part. They're trying to get rid of it. And again, there's two sets of justice. There's the laws that we serfs are required to obey, and then there's the nobility, which basically can get away with anything, including murder, and they're not going to be touched. And I think most Americans are not happy with that. All right, thank you very much for the phone call. I think most Americans are not happy with that. That's not the country we're supposed to be living in. And if the government is not in compliance with that contract, then it is not a legal or legitimate government. And we do not owe it our obedience, our loyalty, or our support, and certainly not life and limb of our children for these endless wars of interventions. All right, we're going to take another phone call. Charlie in Los Angeles, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Good afternoon, Mike. Two things quick. Number one, that one of the two callers ago worried about Building 7. So he knows they could have brought that building down the next morning, and nobody would have seen it. Seth Rich, I would presume that he was shot, or if that story's for real, he was killed by organized crime. And having Jared Kushner in the White House.
Wait a minute. You're making a heck of a leap there. What makes you think that Seth Rich was killed by organized crime? I mean, not that there's all that big a divide between organized crime and politics.
Okay, I'll give you an answer to that. There's an answer to that. Government employees they're clock watchers. They're waiting for their pension. They don't kill people. They have organized crime do it for them. They're the marionettes of the politicians. Okay? They don't get involved. Clinton doesn't have people from Arkansas that are related to him or something killing people. This is organized crime.
Well, it's an assumption, but it's not supported. If you go back to the Clintons' early career in Arkansas, the Clintons did have people working for them that were given very high-paying jobs because when it was required, they would go on out and commit various criminal acts to destroy evidence or destroy witnesses. And again, a lot of this was tied up with the CIA's drug-running operation out of Arkansas. They were smuggling guns down to Nicaragua, and in order to fund it all, because it was not an officially sanctioned intervention, they were funding it with tons of cocaine brought back up on that same smuggler pipeline and sold to our kids. So, yeah.
I'll buy that.
Yeah.
One thing I want to say before I go about having Kushner so close to Trump is other countries around the world, I think, are putting the stops on sharing intelligence with the United States because of the double-crossing that's gone on with the history of Israel. And this is a bad thing, because if you can't trust, Trump and the people around him, you don't know what's going on around the world. And if they're not going to give you the intelligence because they don't trust you to give it to Israel, that's a big problem.
You mean trust the president not to share it with Israel? Yeah, that is a big problem. So it has been a big problem all along.
Around Trump, when you have all these neocons and people like Kushner around Trump, other countries are not going to share vital intelligence with us.
Yeah, well, the Five Eyes will, because that's basically kind of locked in stone. But you're right. Other governments are going to hesitate to share information with the United States out of concern that it's going to wind up in Israel. And the revelation that Israel has access to the unfiltered data take from this NSA spy system is very worrying, because it means Israel can spy on our politicians, on our judges, on corporate officials, and just have this incredible blackmail machine.
I think that's a big concern with politicians that's not discussed on the TV or anything, because everything inside these countries, with their infrastructure, the people that are in charge, they'd be really nervous about communicating with us now, because Israel's history of assassins and all that kind of crap. So, anyways, that's all I got to say, Mike.
All right. Well, thanks an awful lot. There is a gentleman named Victor Ostrovsky, and he is former Mossad. He's retired now. He lives in Arizona, and he's also an artist, and he has an art gallery out there. But he's written a couple of books about what the Mossad is really like. And the first one was called By Way of Deception. And then the second one, I think, was beyond deception. And he lays out all these things that Israel has done. And a good example, of course, would be how Israel tricked Ronald Reagan into bombing Libya by smuggling a radio transmitter into Tripoli that sent out bogus messages to make it look like Muammar Gaddafi was planning a massive series of terror strikes all across Europe. And most of the European intelligence agencies decided these messages had to be bogus. But for some reason, Reagan took them at face value, sent in the airplanes. They bombed Muammar Gaddafi's home. They missed him, killed his 5-year-old daughter. But that's how these things get done. Dirty tricks. Dirty tricks. And the motto of the Mossad, you need to remember, is by way of deception thou shalt do. That's their basic approach. Now then, getting on back to the situation with Comey, and it looks like Comey is literally at war with Trump over Trump's firing him, which is a very dark stain on his resume. And, of course, it has opened up some of the deep state players from the last administration to possible investigation and prosecution by people who will not be inclined to protect them. And apparently the members of Congress are still trying to get all the information about Hillary's homebrew email server. It's just dragging on and dragging on. And if I am correct that Hillary Clinton was using that private email server to deliver U.S. secrets to foreign interests and using her charitable foundation to collect and launder the payments, that is a major scandal. That's the kind of scandal that can wreck an entire government. And right now, despite all of the tanks and soldiers and all the tough talk, the U.S. federal government is very fragile because nobody trusts it. Look at the poll numbers. Confidence and trust in the U.S. government is at record lows. Now, it did go up after Trump's election victory, but because Trump has betrayed so many of his campaign promises, especially with regards to the foreign interventions, the trust is going on back down. Americans are realizing that it doesn't really matter who we put in that White House, because the deep state, the national security state, whatever you want to call them, the oligarchs, they're pulling all the strings to make themselves richer, and they don't care who pays for it in the long run. Now, let's talk about Anthony Weiner. Anthony pled guilty to a single charge of sending sexually explicit material to an underage person, for which he actually got jail time, 21 months. And now everybody is saying, okay, Weiner may be the first domino to fall, and Huma may be next. If Huma is smart, she's going to start making a deal for immunity. And she's going to stay out of small aircraft. She's going to stay out of suburban Washington parks, because Huma, more than anybody, knows the true nature of Hillary Clinton and what happens to people who are in Hillary Clinton's way. Now, a lot of people are saying, oh, 21 months, he lost his career, has he not suffered enough? Well, keep in mind, he was a member of Congress for 12 years, and that means he has a pension built up worth $1.2 million. And so when he comes out of his 21-month sentence, he's going to be in a good position to retire. Go off and relax and do what he was going to do. Okay, we're going to take another phone call. Steve in California, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, your last caller mentioned something about the government, doesn't get involved. They have other people do it. And it's probably true. But I do remember somebody, a staffer who did work for Clinton family, and he admitted on Rents to Jeff Rents, Larry Nichols, that he had killed for the Clinton family. And I don't understand why nobody ever jumped on that and why he wasn't taken in and questioned, and nothing ever came of that. But I remember the episode where he was on Jeff Rents, and he talked about he killed for this family.
Yeah, well, there's a video out called the Clinton Chronicles, and they talk about a lot of the people on that dead bodies list are from the Arkansas years. And so, yeah, you can find people who are willing to do this, whether it's they feel they're smart enough to get away with it, or they know they're going to be protected by the politicians that they work for, which certainly seems to be the case with Seth Rich. Again, you have to look at the Stanley Milgram experiment, that when you have somebody who's in a position of authority saying, go kill this person, your inclination is going to be, well, yeah, maybe. So, but it is a reality.
Well, he evidently grew a conscience because he's dying of lung cancer now, and he wants to clear his conscience. But I remember him telling Jeff Rentz, I killed for these people. That was my job. I didn't question. If I questioned, I couldn't have done it. I had to just carry out the order, and that's what he did. Yeah,
well, we had him on this show, and he said exactly the same thing. I've actually been in correspondence with Larry Nichols all the way back to the 1980s when I first got thrown into this mess. He shared a lot of that information with me. It's out there, but again, we have a justice system that is being told you will not investigate these families and these activities. They're all covered under national security and intelligence agencies, and that's just the way it is in this country.
Yeah. Is he still living? Because I haven't heard much on around.
I do not know. I know that he was not expected to be with us for much longer, but I'll take a look on this upcoming commercial break, okay?
Sounds great. Thanks, Mike.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. And we're coming up here on, as I said, another commercial break. We have another caller waiting on the line. Then we're going to come on back about just how tense the situation in the United States is becoming. And we cannot rule out the possibility of rioting, of a civil war, or a revolution. I don't want to see any of those things happen, but I don't think there's any stopping them anymore. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And apparently, a lot of people are saying Fox News is basically sliding over to be as right-wing, as left-wing as MSNBC. And apparently, one of their new hosts, who are filling in for all these people who are being let go, is Julie Roginski, who used her show today to basically attack the Seth Rich conspiracy theorists. You don't even want to talk to those people. They're conspiracy theorists. Well, look at all the conspiracy theories that turned out to be conspiracy facts. And the days where the majority of the American people will just blindly accept and believe what corporate media tells them, those are pretty much gone. We've been lied to way too many times. We are sadder but wiser. People are very, very skeptical of anything coming out of the government or the corporate media. All right, we're going to take a phone call. Peter in Los Angeles, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, I'm just calling up to sort of follow up on the guy who was saying that the government uses people like organized crime. It doesn't really use their own. That's both right and wrong, but more wrong anymore. A couple of years ago, we may have even talked about this on the air, Mike. The Washington Post, in one of the few things in journalism they've done in the last 10 years, wrote a series called Top Secret America, about how it was multi-part, and maybe it's still on their website, and about how the intelligence community had outsourced almost everything to private companies.
Yes.
It gave them deniability and everything like that. Companies like Blackwater, only there's a lot more of them. And these guys are indeed staffed with people like when I was an Army officer, the people, they would, quote, you wouldn't see him for a long time, or maybe never see him again. And the term they used to use was, he's on loan to the agency.
Yes.
That's what they used to say.
Yes.
He's on loan. So they've been using people like that, and of course the FBI kills people like the guys in Florida who was shot in the back of the head about 5 times or whatever it was at Tsarnaev, friend. But the other thing is, I was also going to talk about, we all know that Israel has everything that we have, Israel has as well.
In terms of intelligence information, yes.
Yes, everything, and they sell us out all the time. I think you brought up many times about how the Jackson, remember how they sold they sold intelligence on our nuclear war planning. In other words, to get their immigration from the Soviet Union.
Yes.
And I wanted to make one more thing. There's a great movie, if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it, and it sort of touches on what we're talking about now, on these shady firms that handle stuff like this, and they're out there because that's what the CIA works on, the intelligence, these contractors.
Yes.
It was Michael Clayton. Have you ever seen?
No, I haven't, but I'm familiar with it, but I don't think I've ever actually watched it. Anyway, Peter, we got to let you go. We got to do a station identification, and then we'll be back with more phone calls. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. We're going to take a few more phone calls. Then we're probably going to close the lines because I'm falling way, way behind on my talking points here. So we're going to go to Ramsey in Canada. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi. Sir, I want to ask you something. Donald Trump's recent trip to Saudi Arabia and making those deals, in my opinion, that's in reaction to Russia making a deal or getting closer to Iran. Don't you agree?
We're closer to Iran in what context? You mean making peace and doing business? Very obviously, Iran has been seen as a target for regime change and invasion, going all the way back to Wesley Clark, basically exposing the whole agenda.
Yes. Yeah. You see, so like what I mean, like Russia and Iran, like doing business and everything. But so my opinion, Trump went to Saudi Arabia just to show Russia, oh, look, like we're getting closer, and you better watch out. Like it's like a provocative move by the U.S.
Yeah, it is a provocative move, and possibly getting all of these 55 other Muslim nations to sign on with this Arab NATO is an attempt to bluff Russia back by saying, you're not just going to be fighting Saudi Arabia, you're going to be fighting all these other countries. And again, I don't know how Russia is going to respond to that, because it's not that Russia cares that much about Iran, but Russia understands the ultimate goal of the U.S. government's war agenda is to basically bring all of the nations of the earth underneath that single global government and that single privately owned central bank. And Russia doesn't want that. China doesn't want it. In fact, none of these nations want to be part of it. That's why they're having to be militarily conquered.
Yeah. You see, sir, like just like you said, like you want to have like an Arab NATO, like those Arab Gulf states. You want to get them together. Just like the United States wants to get the Eastern European countries together against Russia.
Yeah, well, that's definitely been obviously part of the game plan, and you just look at all the weapons and men that the U.S. is pouring into that area along the Russian border, and then they are out there saying Russia's being the aggressor. You don't see Russian troops on the Canadian side of our northern border or the southern side of our border with Mexico. You don't see Russian warships tooling around the Gulf of Mexico. We know who the real aggressor is here.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Francis in North Carolina. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, aloha.
Aloha.
There was some commentary regarding Larry Silverstein regarding WTC7 and so forth. I didn't quite catch all the commentary about trying to find the video or whatever, with his commentary or not. What was the story with that?
Well, the story is that there was this TV series, America's Business, and apparently one of the episodes involved Larry Silverstein acknowledging on the air that World Trade Center 7 was brought down in a controlled demolition. Now, until I actually see and hear that, I don't know if that's real or somebody's over-vivid imagination. But we do know that Larry's on video saying that, yes, they made the decision to pull the building, which seems to indicate they had the means to do so at hand. And somebody just sent me another video that I just now this second put up at whatreallyhappened.com, in which Larry Silverstein admits designing the new World Trade Center 1 year before 9/11 actually happened.
Ouch. Well,
yes.
Anyway, I thought I would inquire because there is a video on YouTube his name simply admitting that WTC7 was pulled on 9/11. It is a 27-second video snippet.
Yeah, I've seen that one all over the place then. But again, it implies they had the means to pull the building. But Larry has denied that's what it means, and it's ambiguous. If this other clip does exist that claims that he says it was brought down with controlled demolition, that would be quite damaging, because obviously they did not have enough time to go in and rig that building for a controlled demolition.
Well, Michael, he can imply anything he wishes to. Being a business person, they can do that without, almost without repercussions for that matter, depending on their terminology and who their attorney or lawyer is for that matter. Now, as for a side issue, the aspect that tens of billions of dollars that is being gifted, I guess you could say, if I'm being polite about it, to Saudi Arabia, what we could do with that money here in the U.S. in the infrastructure, what we could be doing with that. I mean, it just makes me nauseous to think about that just being handed out. I know it's Federal Reserve notes. It certainly isn't gold, I hope, but still, what in the world has Saudi Arabia done for the U.S.? What has any country over the Middle East done for the U.S.? What has the military done over the Middle East but wreck people's lives, homes, business, and whatnot? And people complain about terrorists coming over here. Well, guess what? When you go to someone else's place and wreck it, what do you expect them to do? They're going to hit back. They're going to fire back.
Well,
so, I mean...
Okay, well, interestingly enough, Saudi Arabia has been of service to the United States because it is the anchor of the petrodollar deal and is used by the United States to keep the other Arab nations and OPEC nations in line. Not always successful, but that's a big part of it. Now, interestingly enough, as part of this little confab between Trump and the Saudi king, Saudi Arabia is actually going to invest $20 billion in America's infrastructure. So here we have this bizarre situation where the U.S. government can't afford to improve our infrastructure, but Saudi Arabia is going to pour $20 billion in, and that's going to create jobs and improve our infrastructure. The only problem is they're talking toll roads. In other words, we're heading into a situation where when we drive down the roads in the United States of America, the tolls that we pay for that road are going to go to Saudi Arabia.
So basically, Saudi Arabia is going to own a major chunk of the U.S.
They're going to own the infrastructure that they are investing in.
Now, that's pathetic.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
The people in the U.S. should be owning the property thereof in the U.S. that they happen to live on or in or whatever the case is. Not Saudi Arabia. Let them stay over in Saudi Arabia and live their own little happy lives, just as the U.S. people in the U.S. need to be having their own little happy lives, and the government's staying the heck out of it. And I'm being polite again.
Well,
have a great one.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I mean, again, back in the early part of the last century, that's the way that it worked. The infrastructure was built out of tax revenues, and it was collectively the property of the American people, and it was maintained, usually from things like gas taxes, motor registration fees, taxes on tires and so forth. But as we get further and further into this war economy where the money is just pouring out of the country into the war zones and to bribe foreign governments to go along with the agenda, there really isn't anything left at all for the American people. And that is why Donald Trump was forced to cut food stamps and Medicaid and just drop the load for those unfortunate disadvantaged peoples onto their neighbors in the community. And again, it is almost stunning to realize how much of the tax revenues are being spent for things that are not for the benefit of the American people. And that is something to really keep in mind. All right, let's see. We're going to go to Sean in Seattle. Aloha. Oh, before we do that, we're going to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates just now rejoining our network. And now we're going to go to Sean in Seattle. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Well, pretty much my main thing is I'm trying to figure out how to talk to my friends about the whole global warming. And that was a great call earlier, by the way. But pretty much the whole climate change, global warming thing. And how do I show them that it's all just like that it's all just spoofed up and all they want is, you know, like she sends me articles of like NASA, but I have other articles of NASA that contradict themselves, and I'm trying to, you know, what do you think about that?
Well, part of the problem is that most of the adherents of the global warming agenda are actually treating it like a religion, not a science. And so they've decided what they're going to believe on, and anybody who says anything else is a heretic. But again, up at the top of my page in the little gray menu bar, there is an article called ClimateGate that I put together some years ago, and I do keep it updated with more recent stories. And there are a couple of things in there that you might want to share with your friends. One is a documentary called The Great Global Warming Hoax, and the other one, of course, is this image from the front page of the UK Independent, March 20th, 2000, in which it says, right in bold type, snowfalls are now a thing of the past. And certainly this spring, the snow has stayed in incredibly late. We're a week away from the official start of summer, and they still have snow all over the West.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mike. I'll definitely pass that information along.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we're going to switch over to Tom in Pennsylvania. That's going to be our last call for a while. Tom, what's on your mind?
It's all right to change subjects real quick to a computer question?
Sure.
All right. I got this, I guess, virus where it said you got 5 hours to make a Bitcoin payment to this Bitcoin address. So I just shut down. I booted with my backup program. I use Acronis. There's plenty of them. And just restored the drive to a backup I made last February. And then I didn't want to go back to Windows. I booted in Ubuntu off another drive, and there was a bunch of files on each data drive that had a long number .locked. And then I deleted them, and when I went back to Windows and went back to Photoshop, everything was fine. But now if this thing's going to lay dormant and come back and bite me, you know, before my February backup, I don't know.
Well, I certainly cannot address that issue on this side of the phone line here. I would strongly suggest that you get it over to your local computer technician and ask them on the phone before you go on over there. Are you experienced in dealing with ransomware? And have them, I mean, it sounds like you're very expert yourself, but I would definitely say that you might want to do that. And hopefully, I mean, how did you get the ransomware in the first place?
I don't know, because I don't go on the internet with Windows. You know what I mean? I have multiple hard drives in my machine. Normally, I boot in Ubuntu for the internet and word processing, and the only thing I do with Windows is Photoshop.
Okay, so the ransomware infected the Windows partition, but it didn't affect the Ubuntu.
There was these locked files on there, which I just deleted. But you know, the restore program just ran fine. It was like,
well, you may be okay, but
where the machine was in February.
Again, because I can't touch the machine, I can't verify for myself.
Right.
I really do think you need to consult a professional who knows how to deal with these things and make sure that it really is out of there and it's not going to come back and haunt you somewhere down the road.
All righty. Thanks for your time, buddy.
All right. Thanks an awful lot here. We're going to let you go, and we're going to close the phone lines for a while. Yeah, this ransomware stuff is completely out of control. And the government could care less. Somebody somewhere is making huge amounts of money. Could even be the NSA and CIA playing with these things. Just another way of looting the American people by a desperately broke government. This is the online variation of the police and their civil forfeiture laws, where if you've got too much cash in your pocket, they're just going to take it on the suspicion that you're doing something wrong. And that's a return to Code Napoleon. You're presumed guilty until you can prove you are innocent. And that is certainly not how this country was founded. Now then, getting on back to Washington, D.C. As you know, there has been a great deal of violence in the streets by the liberal snowflakes who are all out there in their black masks and just causing all kinds of ruckus on college campuses. And it's reached a point where Republican members of the House of Representatives are starting to feel that they're at personal risk. Okay, Tom in Pennsylvania, could you call on back, because apparently we have somebody at RBN who's got some advice for you. That's 800-313-9443, and Michael is going to put you in touch with somebody who apparently knows how to deal with this. So do that right now. So anyway, GOP members of the House are asking for funds for more security for their offices back in their home districts, because they're concerned that there might be rioting or fights outside their district offices, which are usually very small, and you'll find them in places like strip malls. So they're getting very, very nervous, and I can understand why. All right, let's turn to the war zones. Apparently, Iraq units opened fire on U.S. jets operating inside the Syrian desert. This is a major, major escalation. And apparently there were, the U.S. Air Force has been bombing these Shiite fighters from Iraq, and they bombed on a couple of occasions, and now they're starting to shoot back. So this thing is spiraling completely out of control. Now, as you know, last week they were trying to come on out there with this, the Syrian death camps, the concentration camps, and they made a big deal about a photo of this military prison and how snow on one section of the roof was melted, from which they made the leap that obviously this is where they have the crematoriums so they can destroy the evidence of their torturing and hanging and gassing these prisoners. And a lot of people said, you don't know that. It's just an area where there's a source of heat. And it could be the prison kitchen. It could be the prison laundry. You don't know. And as I pointed out, look for what should be there and isn't. Crematoria have big, tall smokestacks because they don't want that smell coming down to the ground. They want to give it a chance to get dispersed in the wind. And there was no smokestack on that part of the prison. So we have this article out of the original antiwar.com talking about the anatomy of a smear campaign. And yes, that is exactly what it is. It's another media propaganda to get you to hate Syria and think that, yes, we have some kind of a right to go on in there and just smash them up because they're evil, bad people. Next, they'll claim Assad has a Death Star. Meanwhile, the Syrian forces are retaking much of the north of Syria. The last of the opposition forces have departed from Al-Wa'ir in Homs City. And so Homs is now completely clear of opposition forces. Those people can start to go about rebuilding their lives that have been destroyed in all of this ridiculous regime change nonsense. Meanwhile, down in the south, the fighting is continuing, and it seems like we're seeing the beginnings of this scramble to grab chunks of Syria now that ISIS and Al-Qaeda are pretty much out of the picture. If ISIS and Al-Qaeda were the real issue, the U.S. would simply leave and say, okay, Assad, it's all yours again, we've done good here. But that doesn't seem to be what's going on. And it looks like the U.S. is still thinking that they're going to grab a big chunk of Syria and a big chunk of Iraq for the future Kurdistan. And neither Syria nor Iraq are very happy with that idea at all. And apparently Foreign Policy magazine claimed that the U.S. strike against Syria's forces showed American commanders are willing to use force to maintain de facto safe zones in the country's east. So they're still locked up in that one. Look at all these wars the U.S. has started and cannot get out of. Now, Defense Secretary Mattis is basically talking about escalating the ISIS war worldwide and assuring us all it doesn't threaten civilians, even though We know it does. We'll be right back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Now, again, as we were starting to say before the commercial break, Defense Secretary James Mattis is basically saying we've got to escalate the war against ISIS worldwide. We've got to go everywhere and bomb them. And we know it's a gigantic hoax because ISIS is a tool of the U.S. government. There's ample documentation that ISIS in Syria was being supplied by the U.S. government covertly under the Obama administration by then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and they were using that consulate in Benghazi as the hub of the smuggling operation to smuggle weapons out of Libya that had been used to get rid of Gaddafi over to Syria to get rid of Assad. And Mattis is still out there saying, we're going to go on the warpath against ISIS everywhere. And trust us, we are not threatening civilians. Well, that is ridiculous when you look at the sheer number of civilians that have already been killed by these U.S. military actions. The other day we were talking about this study that concluded that the United States government, since the end of World War II, has killed between 20 and 30 million people in 37 different countries around the world. That shows you who the aggressor is. Now then, the Kremlin has come on out responding to Senator McCain's latest jabberings, saying that it's clear John McCain has a maniacal hatred toward Russia. Now, we, the American people, are sort of expecting that those in positions of power will be making their decisions on what to do after careful, rational consideration of all possible consequences of what they're doing. And the idea that we have Senator McCain out there pushing for war with Russia just because that's what he wants, that's a very dangerous thing to be happening. More importantly, it is a very dangerous thing for other countries to be seeing. Again, going back to the Cuban Missile Crisis, the reason that Kennedy and Khrushchev were able to avoid pushing the button and starting a global nuclear war was that Kennedy and Khrushchev knew each other, did not want to do it. But when you have McCain out there talking like this, other countries are going to think that the button could be pushed with no warning, especially by a country that is openly talking about an unprovoked first strike against Russia, according to Paul Craig Roberts, a country that is invading other countries on the flimsiest of pretexts. It's a much more dangerous situation. John McCain, he wants war against Russia because that's what he wants. Okay, John, here's your rifle, here's your parachute, here's your Dayglow orange jumpsuit. Watch your head climbing into that transport plane, and we'll call Putin and tell him you are on your way to kick his butt all by yourself. But given how many wars we, the American people, have been lied into, we're going to sit this one out. Keep our kids at home. Go, have fun. Don't forget to send postcards. North Korea has launched a new missile. This one is a shorter range than the last one they tested. And they launched it yesterday. The test was a complete success. Interesting little side note. On USA Today, when they were reporting on the missile test, they made a point of saying that the missile was launched from the Pukchang, the area most notable for its hard labor camp for political prisoners. So they're out there still pushing, it's, labor camps for political dissidents, which has got absolutely nothing to do with the missile test, but it's just any chance you can get in there and say something bad about North Korea, that's what they're going to do. Now, following this test, Kim Jong-un has vowed to increase North Korea's military might. They're going to deploy this new intermediate range ballistic missile. Now, this missile can't reach the United States, can't reach here in Hawaii. It is a defensive missile with which to attack naval forces coming to attack North Korea. That's what it's for. And apparently, Kim Jong-un, for this, at least this one missile, has set up an assembly line, like an auto factory. and is going to be able to just crank these things out in volume. All right, we're going to take another break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. Interesting story just broke over at ProjectNSearch.com, where apparently it has now come on out that the sister of one of the two police officers who responded to the shooting of Seth Rich works for the Hillary Clinton campaign, or worked for the Hillary Clinton campaign. So that is now coming on out as well. And we need to be careful about false trails being laid for us. But apparently public interest in this assassination, it's growing, and they can't put that back in the bottom. The corporate media is on the warpath. Corporate media, Washington Post is going after Newt Gingrich. This new lady on Fox is out there saying, oh, it's just conspiracy theories. It's just conspiracy theories. Nope. Okay, now then, Trump and regime change. And we knew this was coming. We know this was in the plan for years. Donald Trump is out there saying, we will do whatever is necessary to fix Venezuela. Now, the U.S. has been wanting to regime change Venezuela all the way back to Hugo Chavez. They tried a coup d'etat against him because that gosh darn Hugo was selling Venezuela's oil for currencies other than the U.S. dollar. And even worse, he was spending that money on the Venezuelan people. And that's a bad example for all those other countries where they've worked so hard to convince the people that all the money should go to the bankers. And one of the targets of this oil price war, along with Russia, was Venezuela. Now, Russia had a diversified economy, and they proved to be much more resilient. But Venezuela is pretty much a one-crop country, and that crop is oil. And so they're in serious, serious trouble. There's rioting. People are hungry. And according to an article over in Global Research up in Canada, the Trump administration has just given the green light for regime change in Venezuela. And Don, I am so disappointed in you. Because you told us on the campaign trail that you thought all these foreign interventions were a bad idea. And they are. We are heading toward a world war that could easily go nuclear. And we're going to lose this one. All right, we're going to take a phone call. Mark in North Carolina, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Mike, regarding not only Venezuela, the whole world situation, we got to watch who we consider because part of the alternate or the independent media. I was listening to Breitbart this morning, and you got this guy, Alexander Marlowe, who seems to be your most often who runs your show now. And clown was talking about Julian Assange, kind of like he needs to be taken into custody. He's an enemy of the United States, and he's also pretty much he gives the Russian he doesn't say it's sure, but he gives it some credibility, and he thinks there's no problem with the missile attack on Assad. The other attack we did the other day on Assad's convoy there in Syria. And yet they keep on calling themselves national populist, and that they're alternate media. I think we got to understand they are not. I tried to get through today, but I couldn't get through to tell them that they're not and that they're full of it. Well, I mean, there has been a very obvious campaign of attempting to either infiltrate or buy up the independent media in order to bring it in line with the official story. And unfortunately, they have succeeded with a lot of people. When you look at independent media that seems to have a lot of money, that's a reason for some caution. Again, with the ability to spy on everybody, they can find the lever to get people to go along with what they want put on out there. And it's a reality. And the best course of action, though, is for you not to have a favorite media outlet, but to become your own best analyst and just That's what I do, but a lot of people don't.
That's why I'm recommending it. For those who don't know this is what you should be doing. Take each story on the basis of the facts in it and decide for yourself if it's making sense or not. Because
I'll give you another example of what this guy did a few weeks ago after the missile attack on Syria. Somebody called in, said that they thought this was a false flag. It was obvious it was a false flag. Any idiot figured that out. But Marlowe told him, I don't take conspiracy theories. And he hung up on the guy. I don't listen to conspiracy theories. This is completely different from when Stephen K. Bannon ran it. So that was what piqued my interest when he was running the show.
It's completely different from what it was. It was completely different from what it was like when Breitbart was still in charge of it.
Well, he wasn't really on the radio, was he?
Not as much, but I mean the whole Breitbart organization was much more in line with being an independent media.
Mm-hmm. They're really more like Fox News now. As a matter of fact, a lot of things. Take, for instance, the Seth Rich case. I should say the Seth Rich murder. They barely touch it, and yet Fox News actually came out and pretty much and it's pretty much pursuing this. Not only Sean Hannity, but a couple other people on that station, which pleasantly surprised me. Every once in a while, I even watch Fox News again because I am pleasantly surprised.
Well, remember, this is just a Fox affiliate in Washington D.C. itself. It's Fox National is not touching it. In fact, Fox National is out there. Hannity is, to his credit, and I hope he's got his Kevlar undies on. But Fox National is taking the position that it's all just another wacko conspiracy theory. And so I imagine there's a lot of phone calls from network down to that affiliate saying, you pull off of this.
Who's that woman you said is on there now? Did she have her own show or something?
I would have to go back in my notes to get it. Julie something. I'll look for it in the next commercial.
It doesn't surprise me, though, because, like I said, Fox is I've always called it basically, at least the last few years, I've called it Fox Neocon News, and which it basically is. It's pretty much run by neocon. But sometimes they're actually on something, and it seems like at least a couple of them now, certainly Hannity is on there, and Hannity was very good with Julian Assange, too. And he's not one of these people calling for his arrest now and prosecution. He actually even went to the Venezuela embassy to interview him. And by the way, that's another thing I heard.
Ecuador.
Ecuador, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Ecuador, I'm sorry. He said, what did I say?
You said Venezuela.
Oh, I meant Ecuador. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, he was saying this morning, too, that same guy Marlowe, how left-wing Ecuador is. I don't care if they're left-wing or not. As a matter of fact, I don't look at socialism as a poisonous word. I think under certain circumstances, socialism works. It worked under Gaddafi in Libya. It worked under Marshal Tito in Yugoslavia, actually had communism, and it worked. He was a dictator, yes, but...
Oh, yeah, it can work. It can work. The problem is that money junkies can't become rich in a socialist economy, and that's why they hate it so much. And that's why they're constantly demonizing it so much. They want fascism, where the system is designed to just suck all the wealth out of the people and put it in their pockets. And they will start wars to get their way.
Even most of Western Europe, until of course, they started this, until they formed the EU, socialism actually worked pretty well there. Now with the EU and now with the opening up their borders, of course it's not going to work because you bring in all these people in, they're using up all the resources and stuff like that. It's not going to work, for people that actually have paid for it. The people of, let's say, Sweden, Norway, Germany, even England. It's now being used by people coming in there that shouldn't be coming in, So even there, socialism is working to a degree.
Yeah, it's destabilizing those countries, and we're already seeing rioting over there, and again, that may well be part of the New World Order, is for every country to descend into chaos so that some supranational military force comes on in and says, all right, everybody come on down, you are now Sector 12 of the new planetary government, and that's it.
That's what I think they want to do. They want to create one world government, And then probably they want to kill most of us, turn the rest of us into and then become robotize themselves, combined with a robot brain or something like that. I think that's what they really want to do. That's what people like, eugenicists like Bill Gates, that's what they're about. Companies like Monsanto, who produce this horrible GMO foods and stuff like that. This is what these people are about. And the vaccines, there's reason behind the madness. It's not just that these people are just stupid. They're not stupid. I would say they're insane, but they're insane intelligently insane. Hitler was insane, but he was also very intelligent. So, you can't say because somebody's insane that they're not smart at the same time.
No, I don't think Hitler went insane toward the end of the war, and apparently his doctor had him juiced up on a lot of very powerful medications that might go a long way to explaining his bizarre behavior. Anyway, listen, Mark, I'm going to let you go, and we're going to switch over to Joe in Tennessee. Aloha, Joe. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael. I talked to you Thursday last week, and I brought up the fact that the senators were asking for all of Comey's notes, not just the one about Donald Trump's meeting with him. And it was not even 2 hours later that they appointed this guy Mueller as the special counsel. And there's no way that they're not putting him in there to bury all the evidence and protect the institution of the FBI. There's already a story out, ABC News Politics, saying James Comey will consult with special counsel Robert Mueller before testifying. Now, this is another example of how the system really works. It's all about protecting the institutions. James Clapper the other day last week said Trump was destroying the institutions, and he meant, the CIA, the NSA, the FBI, when it's really all Trump is doing is exposing the institutional corruption. The people that destroyed these institutions are guys like Comey and Mueller and Clapper. They destroyed it. It's rotted from within. And the more they think they can protect it, they're not going to. Sooner or later, the corruption will be so bad it's just going to fall on its own.
Well, the American people are looking at what CIA, FBI, NSA are doing and realizing these institutions aren't worth protecting and preserving. But as you say, what is really being protected and preserved is the corruption. They don't want the good times to stop. And as far as Comey's notes are concerned, the thing is they're not really official documents. Apparently, there's just quick handwritten note. There's no provenance. There's no chain of evidence. They were not inside any official record tracking system. It's just a note he wrote on his desk that he could have written any time. There's absolutely no guarantee that any notes turned over by Comey were actually written when he said they were written. There's no way to document that.
Well, I'm more interested in Comey's notes that go back into all the other major scandals, not this made-up, phony one about Russian collusion with Trump. If he's taken a lot of notes, he's probably wrote a lot about the Clinton investigation and Loretta Lynch, and he goes way back. This guy, he goes back to Sandy Berger with the notes he stole out of the archives.
Yes.
But I wanted to ask you a question. So Donald Trump had been going around on TV saying that he didn't think there'd be any issue about him firing Comey and that the Democrats were for it. Do you really believe that? I mean, I don't. I find that hard to believe that he didn't realize that Comey was protecting these Democrats and they'd scream and howl the minute they got rid of him. You know what I'm saying?
I would disagree. I think based on some of the things that Trump said during the campaign, I think he's aware that something very ugly was going on with the email server, and that as a result, he was saying lock her up, and of course everybody would cheer, lock her up, lock her up. And I think he understood that when he fired Comey, there was going to be a pushback. It's just probably a lot more severe and dishonest and dirty than he was expecting it to be.
Well, I just hope he's aware of these things. I mean, I called the White House and I've called the Department of Justice about Seth Rich. I've called all my congressmen and my senators because really it's so fishy, the timing of all this attack against Trump was right when the story was breaking on Fox about Seth Rich. And all of a sudden we have the fact that Trump brought up security issues with the Russians, and then Comey's notes about the collusion, and it just the timing really shows panic on the other side.
Yeah,
so
it really does. They're doing the spaghetti approach. They're just going to throw everything they can think of at the wall and hope that something will stick in the minds of the American public. But for the most part, the American people are already very suspicious. And I think a good reason for that is we saw how the Hillary campaign and her liberal supporters behaved like absolutely spoiled, vengeful, petty, vindictive children after the election. Of course, Trump's victory was a huge embarrassment to the corporate media, which guaranteed us Hillary was going to be the president. And so I think the American people are looking at this and realizing it is just more of Saddam's nuclear weapons being thrown at us.
Oh, by the way, I saw Newt Gingrich. This is the second time I've seen him on TV talking about the Seth Rich murder. So he's got a lot of connections, and he's a very intelligent man, no matter what you think about his politics and how he blew it when he had the speakership. But I just find he seems to be bringing it up every time I see him on television. It's very interesting.
Well, it should be brought up, and again, I hope he's wearing his Kevlar undies, because it's not just coming on out with the fact that this was a political assassination, but it also destroys the Russian hacked the DNC narrative, and that's going to be an embarrassment to the DNC, to the Hillary campaign, and to the whole corporate media, which was just feeding us that codswallop, hook, line, and sinker. And so that's why they're in a panic. They understand they have a huge credibility problem in the eyes of the American public, and they created it. It's of their own doing, and we should not be sorry for them. But, yeah, they're scared right now.
Well, they should be, because all the institutions, the FBI, the NSA, the CIA, they've all said, well, it's common knowledge that the Russians were behind the hack of the Democratic emails. So if this comes out, it blows all their credibility, not just, Hillary. It's the institutions of the whole spy state is really going to fall on its face. But anyway, thanks for your time, Michael.
All right, you're welcome. We're going to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back with more news. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. Now, a lot of people are sending me videos of Larry Silverstein talking about pulling World Trade Center 7. And we know those clips are all over the place. Okay, what this one individual is looking for is what they claim to have seen in this series, America's Business, in which Larry Silverstein actually says that there was a controlled demolition. And maybe it was somebody's overactive imagination, and I thank everybody who's sending in these clips of Larry Silverstein saying, we made the decision to pull it, but that's a little ambiguous. Yes, it's used in demolition talk. It does seem to imply having the means to bring the building down, but it stopped short of being unequivocal confirmation of the exact means by which the building came on down. So that's what we're looking for on that. We're going to take a phone call here. Wally in New Brunswick. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Michael. You mentioned the other day you run Windows XP, and you had concerns getting the WannaCry patch.
Well, no, actually, for the most part, I'm running Windows 7. I have Windows XP in a sandbox to run some older software. And I was talking about on my Windows 7, I turned off automatic updates when Microsoft was trying to jam Windows 10 down our throats. And then when that finally ended and I tried to turn automatic updates back on, it was broken because apparently Microsoft had changed something. And I've been putting patches in like crazy, and I still can't get it to work. And at this point, I'm just throwing up my hands in surrender and saying, it's running now. It's doing what I need it to do. I don't need to add anything or install anything from this point on.
Okay, well, I guess a lot of people, Microsoft has hidden that XP patch pretty good. And I think you said you run Kaspersky antivirus on your system.
It's one of the things. It's one of the things I use. I have multiple layers.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the Kaspersky homepage at the very top of their like a www.kaspersky.com or something like that. the very top of their page, there's a green banner. There are two links to that green banner, and it's the first link, and it will take you to their information page. And if you scan down about, so I'd say a little past halfway down, there's an FAQ section.
Yes.
And one of them says, I'm running Windows XP. How can I protect myself? And they give the usual blurb about upgrading your system. Then they provide a link to the Microsoft page where you can get where you can download. It's their catalog page, and it's right there. So that's the second one down.
All right, well, thank you for that information, and we'll forward that out there for all the XP users, of which there are still a large number. Wally, I'm going to have to let you go. We've got to do a station identification, and we will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And we're going to talk about the economy during this part of the show, and the news is not all good, unfortunately. Apparently, according to Fitch, 11 retailers will file for bankruptcy next, including Payless Shoe Source, H.H. Gregg, The Limited, Radio Shack, BCBG, Wet Seal, Gorman's, Eastern Outfitters, and Gander Mountain. And apparently they have all filed for bankruptcy protection through the end of April, which compares with 9 retailers that declared bankruptcy in all of 2016. And they're all getting ready to shutter their stores. I was telling you the other day about when the Radio Shack we had here at the bottom of the hill closed down, and Claire and I went over to the other side of the island, Kaonohi, their Radio Shack was closing down. And here are the numbers taken from several articles that were posted on what really happened, tracked back to their original sources to verify the accuracy. 1/4 of all Americans cannot pay their monthly bills. A lot of people are being forced to resort to using their credit cards, drowning in even more high-interest debt just to keep the lights on. 44% of the American population have less than $400 in cash with which to deal with an emergency. 90 million Americans cannot find a job and have not been able to find a job for months, if not years. So remind me again how this economy is in a recovery. David Stockman is out there. He's got a forecast. He says the fiscal bloodbath and market crash will occur sometimes this fall between August and November. It has to happen. The only question is when and how desperate the bankers and the government will try and change the rules and rig things to hold it off until somebody else is in office. Now, apparently, a Bloomberg reporter captured a stunning sound bite during last week's event at the American Bankruptcy Institute. And according to judges speaking at an ABI conference Thursday, the U.S. Bankruptcy Court for the Southern District of New York is seeing a sharp rise in bankruptcy cases this year, with Chapter 11 and Chapter 15 filings outpacing the national averages. U.S. Bankruptcy Judge Shelley Chapman said Chapter 11s and Chapter 15s have exploded. The numbers for the bankruptcy court are horrifying. It's starting to come apart because ordinary people do not have money with which to go into the stores and buy things, and it's all starting to come on down because the money junkies can't see that their greed is killing the system. It's killing the goose that has given them so many golden eggs. For an economy to function, the wealth has to be recycled from the top back down to the bottom. That's what keeps it going. When you game the system so that all the wealth flows out of the population and parks itself at the top, the economy cannot function. And that's where we are right now. And until somebody is willing to go up to those money junkies and give them a good poke in the nose and say, wake up, collapse is inevitable. Now, apparently the commodities bust has hit farm lenders. There are lenders who specifically deal with the farming industry for the year's seeds, equipment, buying and selling the farms themselves, and apparently delinquencies of farm-associated loans have surged 225%. If you want to know who's in control of the economy, nobody. It's just being allowed to run on autopilot, and it's running out of control. Over in Puerto Rico, now their employee retirement system has been forced to file for bankruptcy. And apparently over in Greece, their government is now so desperate for money to meet the austerity goals of the European Central Bank and the IMF, they're literally doing mass confiscation of safe deposit boxes, securities, even going into people's homes. That's how crazy it is. All right, let's take a couple of phone calls. Ron in Texas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Ron, are you there? Okay, we're not hearing Ron.
Hello, Mike. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. What is on your mind?
Okay, aloha. Thank you. I need help from you and your Rivero's Rangers. I called John Friday, but it was at the last minute to ask him if he had any clue for this. When Trump and Obama had their first meeting, there was a 90-minute meeting, and they had I caught all the press conferences where they were inside the White House. I recall having viewed another video in which they came outside of the White House, and Trump looked completely, his demeanor was completely changed. And I have looked high and low for that video using all kinds of search terms, and I cannot find it. I wonder if you and your Rangers might be able to help.
Well, I'll certainly take a look for it, and if I can find it, I will post it after I'm done searching for this Larry Silverstein video, of course. And if any of our members can find it, they can post it to the website as well. So we'll keep a lookout for that. I'm rather surprised
Thank you very much.
that it would be gone from YouTube this quickly. All right, thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to switch over to Milton in Pennsylvania. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, Michael, how you doing? Aloha. Question on the economic collapse. People that owe debt, to the banks and for the house and their cars and, the stores and stuff, what would happen to that debt?
Well, at some point, if the debt cannot be paid, it has to be written off. And at that point, that's when the banks start getting into trouble. That's what happened back in 2008 when they were coming out with these subprime mortgages, and they were issuing these loans to people who really were not in a position to pay them off, especially when those interest rates left the teaser rate and jumped up. And so the loans would default, the house would foreclose. But again, the entire Federal Reserve System is dependent on debt to perpetuate itself. There always has to be more borrowing and more debt to keep that pyramid going. And that's why when they get into these situations, they start offering loans to anybody. And they loosen the security requirements, and you have the subprime mortgages. Now you've got the subprime auto loan problem. And when they can't find more people to loan money to, or when they can't find more people willing to borrow more money, that's when it all starts coming apart.
So everybody would lose their homes, they would lose their cars. That would be the case, right?
Well, in theory, yes, but what are you going to do with a foreclosed home if there's nobody with the money to buy it? Same thing with a car. They might just write off the loans, and I would assume that in a collapse that devastating, that the government, rather than risk a civil uprising, is going to come on in and say, all right, we're just going to freeze everything right now until we can sort this mess out. You stay in the home that you have right now. You stay in the car that you have right now. Remember when they froze wages and prices. I think it was back under Nixon. Just issued an order saying everything is frozen now until we can figure this out. And I would certainly hope that somebody would do that, possibly say it's time for a jubilee. All debts are forgiven. Let's restart the system.
Okay, one last thing, Michael, and I'll hang up, and you could I'm not up to speed. I heard you talking about something about them messing with the Medicare, Medicaid, and food stamps. I'm not up to speed on that. If you just go over real fast.
Well, real fast, Donald Trump's new budget is cutting substantial amounts of money from the Medicaid and food stamp programs, and I don't agree with it because we do have a segment of our population who are very fragile, and they do need the support. But what we're seeing here is continuance into the wartime economy, where everything produced by everybody goes to the war machine, and there's going to be a lot of suffering here in the United States. And that's an aspect of the last two world wars a lot of people don't know about, that for those individuals who are not healthy enough to go into the military or find a job at the military factories, there was a lot of homelessness. In World War II, it was hard to see because they were still coming out of the Great Depression. But the wartime economy of World War II actually prolonged the suffering of that depression.
Okay. Okay, thank you much, Michael. Keep up the great job.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to switch over to Sherry in Fredericksburg. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. This is about Social Security benefits, and now they are projected to go down in 2019, 2020, but it won't be anything to do with Trump, and this is how I know. When I took mine, when the baby boomers were taking theirs, a lot of them were taking them early. And so I asked before I decided if I wanted to go full benefits or if I wanted to take them early, I asked when all the baby boomers that are taking early benefits on Social Security, when they all amortize out, because you get this upfront money, see, if you take it early. But at some point you go through that, then you're in with everyone else. When they amortize out to where everyone is sort of on equal footing because the baby boomers have spent their upfront money, I said, will at that time the benefits go down? And they said, yes, they will. And I said, okay. And they said, you will be this age. Okay, that age is going to be in 2019 or 2020. And I want people to know, I know you're talking about Medicare, but Social Security benefits back in the Obama time were expected to go down when the baby boomers took their upfront money, which made sense to me that they do something like that.
That's not really what's going on. What's going on is that back under President Bill Clinton, he looted the cash surplus that was built up for the baby boomers and spent it as general revenues. And he basically termed it a loan. There was a special Treasury bond that was issued to the Social Security Trust Fund for that money that was taken out. But the federal government has never been in a position to redeem those Treasury bonds. And that's why they're now having to basically cut the support to those baby boomers. Because Bill Clinton basically embezzled their retirement funds and spent them to make himself look good with his magic budget surplus. And now they're basically having to dump the losses onto the retiring workers.
Yes. Well, I'll tell you what, they really tried to get me to take it early. They said, oh, no, don't wait these years. Go ahead and take it now. You have all this lovely upfront money to work, and go ahead and take it early. See, and this has made me really suspicious because when it comes time for them to decrease the benefits, if I took it early, I'm going to be starting from a lower position, which means going forward, and when you're healthy and you think you might make it through your 80s just fine, you're going to lose a lot of money. So if people can hold off, I think it would be better. I think a lot of baby boomers were afraid the whole thing was going to go away, and they wanted to get it while it was still there,
There is that real risk. There is that real risk. Now, I'm the only thing I've signed up for is of course the Medicare part. Claire and I are never going to be in a position of being able to retire. That's just a reality. So I am not conversant with the ins and outs of how Social Security is going to be paid out. But I agree. There's a real risk that Social Security could simply run out of money. I mean, if there is the major economic crisis that everybody seems to think is going to happen this year, it's all going to come down. There isn't going to be any Social Security. There isn't going to be any food stamps. It's all going to be gone. And we are going to be in a world of hurt. And we had better make a point of tarring and feathering those people who are responsible who mismanaged our nation, who mismanaged our money and our economy for their own gain, and we need to give them a big, thick coat of tar and feathers.
Well, let me say this, Mike. Once you get to be 66 or whatever it is for your age, I'm a little older than you are. I'm closer to your wife's age.
Okay.
And when you do take it, if you take it early, they could, and you make over 1,200 or whatever. If you make over a certain amount, 12,000 or something, for the year, they start taking. You're penalized. Just if you could wait, and if Social Security is still there for you when you turn that maximum age, then you can go ahead and keep working and take it too. And you don't get penalized. It's just you get penalized if you take it early. You get penalized. You're going to go in with less money if you take it early once they amortize everything. You know what I'm saying? And you're going to wind up with more money if you wait your full time. And this would happen for everyone. If Social Security is still going to be viable, then they want everyone to take it early. So when they do decrease the amount, then they're down to a skeleton amount, you know. And I think it's avoidable if you go full time, and then you can make as much as you want over and above that, and you're not penalized. So I wouldn't exactly write it off yet.
There needs to be some kind of a pamphlet or something that lays this all out, because in typical government fashion, it's confusing, it's obfuscated, and certainly we need to understand it a lot more clearly. Trying to get anything clear from this government is very difficult. I still have problems with the copyright website because it just goes on and on and on and on. Anyway, Sherry, we're going to let you go.
Sure.
And we're going to switch to Tom in Florida. Aloha, Tom. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, good day, Michael. How are you? Yeah, Michael, first off, you were talking about earlier about conspiracies. What about what Obama did with the Chinese killing our CIA agents over in China in the last 2 years? Nobody ever talked about that, but if that would have been under Trump,
we don't know that was Obama had anything to do with it. I mean, that's a bit of a leap there. I mean, obviously, every government on the earth knows that CIA is inside their country trying to find out things that they would prefer to keep secret, and apparently China succeeded in uncovering this CIA operation inside their country, much the same way that the U.S. government found that Israeli spy ring operating in our country just before 9/11. Obviously, China is treating their captured spies a lot more seriously than the U.S. treated the Israeli spies, who were basically just sent back home.
Yeah. Michael, one thing I really want to talk about, the reason I did call, did you see, I don't know if you happened to catch 60 Minutes yesterday, but they were talking about what's going on in Brazil. You know they put 350 of their politicians in prison right now?
Oh, good.
I mean, did you hear what's going on in Brazil? I mean, they're ready to round up the whole government and put them all in jail.
Oh, wow, I definitely want to see that.
In my life.
Well, you're not going to hear it on the U.S. corporate media. It might give the American slaves bad ideas. You know, we don't want them knowing about, where there's literally a revolution going on in Brazil over the bad way the Brazilian government has maltreated the Brazilian people, favored the money junkies, and just been corrupt from top to bottom. Good for the Brazilian people. I think it's a great idea.
Right. Hey, Michael, one more thing. That lady just called about Social Security.
Yeah.
You know, about 5 years ago, they used to send you pamphlets every year on your Social Security, and the reason they stopped doing that because they were going to save $7 million over the course of a year for not mailing out mailers. Can you imagine that? So they can save $7 million. They don't want nobody to know what's going on in Social Security. But I remember every year you used to get a pamphlet saying how much you were going to get when you got to a certain age.
Yes.
It stopped that like 5 years, 6 years ago. So they say, I remember the article. $7 million. I'll never forget.
Well, now they're trying to go paperless, and they've set up a new website where you go on in and you have your Social Security number and the password, and everything that you're supposed to be looking at is there. And I used it to get my my Medicare thing pushed through. And I think they're selling our names to advertisers, because ever since I signed up for Medicare, I'm getting all these email advertisements for special large cell phones for seniors with big numbers and buttons, and senior living facilities. I got to tell you, it's really depressing me, because I can't go on pretending I'm sort of an upper middle-aged guy. I'm an old guy now, and I'm not being very dignified and graceful about it. Okay,
Michael. One more thing that's breaking on the news. 650,000 people have visas or overstaying their visas. 650,000. This broke out in the news. I saw that drugs and all that. There's 650,000 people are not, have their visas and are overstaying their visas.
Okay, and they grabbed that one Australian girl here in Hawaii. All right, Tom, got to let you go. Got to do a commercial break. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And I'm looking at an email that just came on in from somebody who took their Social Security retirement 10 years ago and saying that back 10 years ago there was no component about taking money up front. So I would assume, like everything else in the government, they're changing the rules all the time for their best advantage. So if you are that AGE and you are having to look at these issues, you really need to do your homework, because there's one guarantee about looking at any government form: it's going to be obfuscated beyond belief. All right, we're taking the phone call. In fact, this is going to be our last phone call for a while. Donna in New Mexico, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Michael. Thanks for taking my call. And I have to say that upon hearing the details of these proposed cuts that the Trump administration is putting forward, which I find stunning. I mean, if I've heard one estimate that's $1.7 trillion in total over I don't know how many years. But Ron Paul's words are ringing in my ears, because I remember when he was campaigning that he wanted to strengthen the economy, get us back on our feet. But he said after decades of creating a bad economy and people becoming dependent on the system and entitlements, et cetera, you can't just cut it off overnight. You have to rebuild the economy, and then when people can get jobs, and he said there will always be people that will need it, and you would never cut them off. But at the same time, you can't, when you've created this dependency, you can't just turn off the spigot and say that's it.
No, you'd have rioting in the street immediately. I mean, that's
but his plan was a good one. It was a good one.
Yeah, it is a good one.
Very logical. I just wanted to bring that to the surface again, because I've been thinking about that all day, and that's all I had to say.
Well, the government obviously wants everyone to be dependent on them, because then we'll do what we're told to do. And dependency is slavery. We learned that the hard way back under King George III. I mean, I think it was just a year ago, the FDA was actually openly advertising, everybody come on over, get on food stamps. We've got plenty to hand on out. And they want you dependent on those little plastic cards for your food, because then you won't stand up to the government out of fear that that card will stop working. And that's what it is. That's another system of control. But the problem is, as you say, when everybody is on a government handout, who gets to pay for it all? Rome went through the same problem when they entered the phase of the bread and circuses, and the people of Rome didn't do all that much. They had to fund it by looting the outer provinces. And when that fell apart, Rome collapsed. Which is why I keep saying there are a lot of similarities between what is going on in Washington, D.C. today and what led to the downfall of Rome and, for that matter, the Soviet Union. Okay, all right, we're going to close the phone lines for a while. We're going to get back to the news here. Still talking about the economy. Bitcoin soared through $2,100. It's now up over 135% year to date. And I have to tell you, I am wondering if we're looking at some kind of a bubble or a manipulation, somebody to get very rich with a pump and dump, or maybe to simply send it on up, get everybody to invest in it, then crash it to sort of destroy the idea of cryptocurrencies and lure us all back to the warm embrace of the Federal Reserve note. But for Bitcoin to be going up this much, this quickly, frankly, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like real economic activity. It feels like manipulation. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the show, part of this little deal that Trump is working out with Saudi Arabia is going to pledge $20 billion to the Blackstone Corporation for American infrastructure development. Sounds like good news. We're going to get our infrastructure repaired, at least partly. And obviously Blackstone Group is going to be hiring a lot of people to do that work. The problem is they're talking about toll roads and other works that will, for all intents and purposes, be owned by Saudi Arabia rather than we, the American people. So there is a reason to be concerned about that. It's a reason to be concerned about that, because the original model in this country was that your taxes were spent to build roads, airports, various other things, and they were the collective property of the American people, and you were not charged to use them, other than the gasoline and tire taxes, traffic ticket fees, and vehicle registration. That was able to fund it all. So where's all that money going now? We'll be right back after these commercials. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. Now, getting on over to Europe, the European Union, the refugee disaster. Apparently over in Germany, their Federal Integration Commissioner, Aiden Ozo-Uz, is now out there saying German culture does not exist. There's no such thing as a German culture any longer. Diversity is the nation's strength. You need to stop thinking about being German and Oktoberfest and the pretzels and the beer. Let all that stuff go. And just embrace this new kind of fluffy, mushy, nothing really to it social culture. And this guy is also out there saying migrants should not be expected to assimilate to the local culture. This is the New World Order on full display. They're trying to erase everyone's sense of a national, historical, or regional identity. And by the way, the last statue of Robert E. Lee just got taken down today. They want you to forget who you once were. Your mind will be void. You won't have any idea who you are. You won't even know what restroom to be using. But that's okay. We'll tell you from now on who you are and what your purpose in life is. And it will be beautiful for the money. Now, there's been a lot of talk lately about a new European Union army, which would basically supersede all of the armies of the member states. And the member states are digging their heels in on this one. And Brussels was announcing they're establishing the new EU Army headquarters. And everybody was, oh, this is the beginning of a Well, they opened it. It's called the Military Planning and Conduct Capability Facility. It turns out it's little more than a call center with a staff of 9 people. That's it. Much ado about nothing. Up in Sweden, as you know, their liberal feminist government is trying very hard to be on board with the open borders policy. And Sweden, like so many other countries in the EU, are trying to sort of hide this whole rape problem. But the numbers are starting to get to a position where everybody has to acknowledge what's going on. And a new report from the Swedish newspaper Dagens Nyheter is finding that immigrants, refugees, are behind 90% of all the murders and attempted murders with firearms in Sweden. You can't ignore that that is a problem. But they're going to try. Now, down in France, Marine Le Pen is turning away from her failed attempt to win the presidency, and she's going back to focusing on an overhaul of Front National policy. And apparently, as part of that, she is basically abandoning the Frexit. Apparently, it's not high on her list of things to do, and a lot of people in France are very disappointed at that. That's why they supported her. They want the Frexit. Now then, there is another health warning out there, and this is mostly in Great Britain. Apparently, hepatitis E has been found in European pig products. And this is a very, very serious illness. It attacks your liver. It can cause paralysis. It can be fatal. And cases are rising. And the gastroenterologist at Royal Cornwall Hospital Trust, Dr. Harry Dalton, said the vast majority of cases can be tracked to European pig products such as hams and salamis. So if you are in Great Britain, be very cautious of those products. Ask your supermarket manager, has there been a recall? And steer clear if that's not the case here. Last week we were talking about June Chu, who is a dean at Yale University, and she was out there on Yelp writing very insulting and racist reviews of local restaurants, saying this is where the white trash will be comfortable eating, this is where the barely educated morons will feel right at home in this place. And she has now been suspended, and justly so. But she's trying to say that she was out there basically trying to put white people in their place, or words to that effect. And this is a very, very scary phenomenon in our country, where all of a sudden it's okay to be to segregate white people, to discriminate against white people, to hurl insults at white people, and nothing's done. If you treated blacks or Hispanics, or especially Jews, the way white people are now being treated in this country, oh, they'd be all over the place. You're a racist, you're an anti-Semite, you can't do that. White people, it's open season. And that is very, very alarming. When you recall what happened in places like Zimbabwe after the end of the apartheid regime, and there was a huge backlash. And all of this is being fanned on this issue of slavery. But nobody alive today was ever a slave on a southern plantation. We're all slaves to that 1044, but that's a different matter. Nobody alive today ever owned a slave. And before you call on in and say, well, your ancestors owned slaves. No, my ancestors ran a station on the Underground Railroad. But they're fanning it, and you need to understand that less than 10% of the white people living in the antebellum South owned slaves. Less than 10%. And they're trying to tarnish everybody with that slave owner smear. And they conveniently forget the over 600,000 white people who died bringing an end to slavery in the antebellum South. I mentioned bread and circuses earlier. We're at that stage. We have a population of young people, the liberal snowflakes, who have discovered that they can get all the things they want just by screaming loud enough for it. Like the masses in the Colosseum. And a government that is currying their favor by giving them what they say they want in expectation of electoral support the next election. And that is not how a republic is supposed to work. We're talking about a nation that is rapidly becoming a mobocracy. And that's another symptom of impending collapse of the nation. Now, apparently, there was this bill over in New Jersey, Senate Bill 2830, and it was an attempt to use taxpayer funds to set up an anti-gun study at a university. And it didn't even get off the launch pad. It was basically slammed and saying, you're trying to use the prestige of our college to push the anti-gun agenda. And so as a result, it was never even sent to the floor for a vote. But it was just a very obvious attempt to create an anti-gun think tank fraught with the respectability of, oh, this is a college program, we must pay attention. No matter how ridiculous their pronouncements, it's a college, we must respect it. A lot of the global warming hoax came out of colleges. The Hadley Climate Research Unit at the University of East Anglia, Penn State, plus government agencies like NASA and NOAA. We'll just have them put out the propaganda and everybody will say, oh, it's NASA, it must be true. No. Problems over at Hanford, again, sadly. There's been a second radiation leak, and apparently this time workers were contaminated. And apparently that system of tunnels where they're storing all this material has been found, following inspection, to be deteriorated pretty much throughout the entire system. And so now they're doing an emergency patch of literally trying to cover over the top surface of where the tunnels are with large tarps, so that when the tunnels collapse, that there won't be all that much plutonium release, or so they hope. It's just insane how much damage has been caused by the bomb factory. They haven't even detonated the bombs, and already they're poisoning the world. Okay, WikiLeaks is out there with more information about what's going on with the computers. And they're basically saying the CIA now controls your computer. It's wide open to them. And WikiLeaks is releasing more information from Vault 7. This one is called Athena. And it is a surveillance tool designed to capture communications from Windows XP all the way up to Windows 10 machines. It will run on all of them. Very universal piece of software. And apparently details of the Athena malware were available in a document created by the CIA in November 2015. And the malware is said to have been made in conjunction with U.S. cybersecurity firm Siege Technologies, which was acquired by Nehemiah Security late last year. Big business in spying on the American people. Big business on spying on the American people. And apparently tech companies will be offered additional technical details to help fix flaws. This is coming from Assange. They're taking all of these malware and they're sending them to companies like Kaspersky and McAfee and all the others to try and build the protection in. There's one small problem with that. The U.S. government has passed a law where they can go to these security companies and say, you will not detect this malware. It was a big stink back when the FBI came out with Magic Lantern. And all of the security companies, Norton, they were all told, this, you will keep this invisible to you. And the backflash on that is the cyber criminals realized the Magic Lantern was a magic key through all the security, and they started making their malware to match the signature of Magic Lantern, and they caused a lot of damage. All right, we're going to grab ourselves a phone call. Nico in Southern California, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, nui, Mike.
Aloha.
What was on my mind was, I went up to Cal Berkeley over the weekend. I was in the belly of the beast, as it were.
Yes.
And a friend of mine had graduated with, it was an English, some kind of language arts degree, which is just funny. And a couple of things that concern me about the commencement speech. It's pretty clear that, of course, the leftists have the world divided into two groups of people. There's the oppressed and the oppressors, and, I don't want to go into all of it. A lot of it was kind of just what you would expect to hear. But they had their keynote speaker, T. Geronimo, I don't know, I think his last name is Boone. He's some kind of activist, wrote some fictional book. And they're literally trying to say that if you want to protect the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, then you're like standing with the KKK.
Boy, that's a bit of a reach.
It was, look, the first person spoke, and, I kind of tuned out, and then the next girl got up there and told her story, which mostly was about herself, and I really tuned out. But this guy started speaking, and I'm like, I'm going to pay attention, because I just want to see how far it goes up here at Berkeley. And, man, another thing about that entire city and all the kids on that campus, none of them are freaking smiling, none of them. So everyone's all upset up there. I was at Trader Joe's. I had to make some jokes to make the guy at the cash register laugh. I think these people hate themselves, man. It's the millennials. I think they're a lost cause. I don't think there's anything you can say. I'm just not even talking to them anymore. Yeah.
Well, they're basically, without all the political correctness, they're literally being told that your self-value consists in finding things to be offended by. It is. When you're in that kind of a mindset of everything is offensive, then you can't see anything as actually being funny, because anything that's funny to one person will be offensive to somebody else. Even Clint Eastwood is out there saying we've lost our national sense of humor, and he was making a comment that in today's PC culture, he couldn't make the movie Dirty Harry. And he's absolutely right, because there were a lot of stereotypes in there. But the situation is that Dirty Harry was a work of fiction. And we shouldn't take works of fiction all that seriously. But we have way too many people running around our culture whose entire sense of self-valuation is always finding something to be offended about. And they are very useful tools for trying to shut a culture down intellectually by saying, don't think what you're thinking might offend somebody. Don't say anything that might offend somebody, and eventually you just stop functioning. You just sit there and wait for somebody to give you an instruction.
Well, it's funny you should say it that way, because the actual professor, the dean, whoever he was, the head indoctrinator is what I call him. He had said that in this culture, you know, given that there's some kind of language arts degree, I think it was English, basically language is what they have as their weapon. And, you know, they're using linguistics to limit our expression, and they're using linguistics to reshape all these people's reality. But I just don't think it's going to work, Mike. I mean, look, I'm a Generation Xer on the cusp of millennials, and I just wear it as a badge of honor that I wasn't born 2 years later. I think these people born after 82 or 85 and going all the way for that 20 years, 80-90% of them are just lost. And so I'm not even talking to them anymore about politics or anything.
Well, you know, the use of the linguistics to control the mind, I mean, that's right out of George Orwell's 1984. That was the theory behind Newspeak, that if you didn't have a word for a bad thought, you could not have the bad thought. And language actually is the map by which the mind does organize its thoughts. And if you are able to deny certain words and concepts to a person's vocabulary, you actually prevent those thoughts from entering their mind. And that Orwell was very brilliant when he realized it.
Oh, Helen Keller says that she doesn't have any memory before she had language.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all. Okay, well, listen, we're going to have to let you go. We're going to be taking a break, coming back with the last segment of our program after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We've got a story just now breaking. Apparently over in Manchester, England, singer Ariana Grande was having a concert and singing, and something happened in the crowd, either gunshots or a bomb. Triggered a panic. There have been deaths, and we're waiting to see what that was all about. But that is still now developing, that story. Getting on back to the computers. As you know, the corporate media and the U.S. government have been trying to blame the WannaCry ransomware on North Korea, insisting that they know it had to be North Korea, even though the core code came from the National Security Agency. North Korea is officially denying this, of course, and North Korea doesn't exactly have a reputation for excellence in software development of any kind, benign or criminal, and basically says it's just part of this North Korea bash campaign, which we know has been going on all along. Now, singer Chris Cornell of Soundgarden apparently committed suicide, and his wife is saying that it was all the fault of this prescription anxiety medicine, which apparently was not making him less anxious, but was just cranking him up even more. And she's convinced that it was an adverse reaction to these medications. Now, here's a bizarre story. This is out of the state of Washington, and they did a survey and they discovered of high school students, and they discovered in every average-sized high school class in the state of Washington, there are going to be somewhere between 2 or 3 students who have attempted suicide in the last year, and an additional 3 or 4 have seriously considered ending their lives. Now, is school really such a dungeon that these kids are thinking about killing themselves and trying to kill themselves? I want to know how many of these kids who attempted suicide or thought about suicide are on these prescription psychiatric medications. That is a ridiculously high number of students to be trying to kill themselves or thinking about killing themselves. There's something going on there. Now, apparently, transgender surgeries are in huge demand. Demands for the surgery skyrocketed 20% in the year 2015. And that's a rather interesting number because there's another article came out of sexchangeregret.com where apparently a lot of people who have the sex change operation, they regret it when it's over. They want to go back. Of course, it's impossible. But that's also 20%. 20% of the people are having regret. People are getting these surgeries as a fashion statement. And it's not working out. All right, there's the music. Time for me to get on out of here and get something useful done with the rest of the day. We will be back tomorrow here on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Until then, take everything you learn here, share it with everybody else. We are struggling to get the truth out in a nation where the government lies to us about everything. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.